Everyone's good. Alright. Advantage 1, expertise, America's civil services on the blink, loss of bargaining rights, rules most important line of defense against unfair treatment and partisan retaliation, 1 hand, 25 civil servants, are sending NASA West signals, NASA, NHS, CDC, HMS, Guadalupe, Florida, was required, half a million on student protection, water cover agreements, and government news reported after the service, otherwise, interest on jobs and purchasing of cars that are adjudicate unfair treatment, anyone raising suspect mismanagement, expert retail shopping units, employees union rights, making self-set, even that mismanagement, terminating bargaining rights, harms to civil service, retention of experts, and their willingness for candor, handling suit 25 China and TV for most of the workforce, and people in civil service, that by all means difficult to see because of the way most practice of the ability to relate to special disability protection, with all sides of the protection, local pressure on the union contract employees who prefer to direct the flag safety because of the first mission. Under Chapter 16, civil servants manage a raft of catastrophic or stolen 22 civil service insecurity organizations management for catastrophic risk of some obviously with tax laws, serving to bank level, setting management for security figures, the job protection made possible from, essentially protecting the like a shop for us, like told here, it's also class safe, risk of the confidence and intent for protection. When ensure accessing the cultural advice, service of the farm, all life assistance, and contribution, or Chinese norm across organizations, civil service, whose work rights with individual no calls on service, maintain networks of consistency, who has all offices, and they can have strategies for constituting clean up the city, then more civil service, human based by based on data and integrity. Federal governance failures create many scenarios for existential harm, nuclear security, terror, grids, outbreaks, environment, and recessions. More 25 a common thread ran these successes. The scientific expertise and research services, legal, environmental, who oversee our own planning for further suburban safety, technical research, children's solar nuclear suffer, environmental labs that are around this, risking of the nation tries to attack one until law enforcement have fire reasonable responsibilities for those around front codes and responsible and not all trouble to what something actually market solution laws of obviously ways they don't work finance financial watch our guns well terrorism America's strength expertise terrorism goes nuclear archipelago 18 the federal terrorism fixing all kind of honor the society will attempt to nuclear assassination no country must use to useful terrorist weakness to make trouble illicit trade with distrustful foreign rights intentions and lead to nuclear use assassination of confidence and anniversary moves a company military utilized when pandemics are existential Kim 21 sudden disease can affect all those disease extinction the black flag smallpox and will affect large amount of the short increase mobility symptoms that affect every person because of cancer models never to not on quantitative systems so we can study various disease characteristics real and results real disease led to extinction grid failure cascades extinction of direct and follow-on effects Alexander 24 propelled by globalization systems grown on table points failure combined across those well known to show the angel disaster a cascading effect grid 3 contamination industry culture and then business authority to destruction of energy water consequences to recombine feed wildfire slowly temporarily cyber consequences I find utilities urbanization and interdependence failures farming for baking water fields helicopters transportation to escalate crisis management of presence, environmental rollbacks towards the planet, extinction, coal 24 to curtail rights of agencies, and automatic and then the EC would be extinction of progress national trouble over services to go see running fossils. That will lead to warming trouble would take us back to social capacity to absorb everything prices, ocean temps and floods, vortex and predictive power lines, to store society cannot function. Growth pacifies grid power tension, downturn is existential. Sean 25 power struggles, 1 nation, 16 cases, 12 social war, calculated structures, World War II, was influenced by depression, conditions, wars, possible factors, follow, stable, or both of the interest of main peace, prospects, test by competition, prompting grant, question, research, challenges, high cities, high lows, growth, temperature, check, the assess, so a predictable and comfortable workplace environment, grounded in union-based protection for merit is key, Kilo 24, essential actor and policy bureaucracy, and includes making system for policies, programs, discretion, expertise, and details, issues not foreseen, personal force with advice, congress, and interfunction, significant public policies, chair policy, not customer address, every problem and policy, expertise, policy, expertise, policy, problem, growth, need factors, complex, requirements, and already have to reduce SCT, regulatory security, protecting masters, and FT, ensure safety, security, and public health, federal decisions, working problems, and critical control, to push bureaucracy, reduction, working fairness, expertise, working for the levels, like the implemented, drive experts from federal point of view, experience, less likely to use own opinions are unwelcome, to suppress other discrimination students side, civil service on track review, experts from policy issues, even when to say rapid limitations, nature, power move, requires masturbatory cycle levels to be neutral, and controlling filter based committed examination factor, limitations from levels can operate with whoever listens to for inappropriate reasons, use strong actions, right information, third nervous system, grieving challenge, personal administrative structure, directive security, promotion, uncomfortable, risks, and others, unless consensus is held after elevate loyalty, delusion. Legitimize government officers of Congress, initiative expertise, effective government, bureaucratic capacity, or at risk. The plan alone repairs the civil service independence and confidence of protection and litigation and lobbying solve all causes. Handler 24 rights, the straight and past powers even play a role in civil service independence, spying factors, service, lack of rights, discretionary judgment over the rights, so don't go into negotiate federal dispute. This humans are fear of themselves to CB as an alternative to application of law rules, organizational being the first units that execute off the latest with the power of market and works and counter the power of investment detail. Those presidents and structures, all services, when recent courts of the rights, well as CBS unit over nearly any issue affecting condition major method undermining regulatory effect business due to undermining well I'm sure burden supporting conditions reassigning staff as well as including funding units so much conscious and deterioration working conditions for execution ability to criticize speak publicly and authors social generally check of the use employees' labor rights keep guaranteed of ability to speak, public testimony, and officially speaking. Employees cannot labor can resist the summons and policy practice organization reflects recognition of value of organization, strength, rights, and objective unique and expertise, allowing well-financed events as unions achieve higher win rates and unrepresented employees find financial and logistical support and individual employees without litigation, losing mutual aid, and incentivization, taking reference to account. Unions on Congress is one of the only programs with money as potential influence on Congress, restoring CBR's labels, policy autonomy, and scientific integrity, joining 25 union right to provide federal employees away to the workplace and report wrongdoing, restore CBR's union employees and acquisitions to universities to federal employees, not for activities and experience to federal employees with voices protection, level, integration against journalists, compromising, and glorifying CBS staff, security, scientific integrity, provisions and whistleblower protections for female employees, immigration use unlawful orders that damage is severe but not irreversible. Schumacher 25 Trump slow to spend that. Deep state, long way to go. That's what we're saying. Keeping their heads down, seeing other jobs. That's even if they can get jobs from us. Job market is limited to be able to oversee a job worth by 100,000 per picture. Then thoughts still boys up to 2.2 million civil service by end years cut about 12%. Thus, the plan of the United States federal government should substantially strengthen collective bargaining rights for workers in the federal civil service. Advantage she was overreached. Trump's assault in the civil service paves the way for broad executive aggrandizement, authoritarian fill in one hand 25 Trump's hostilizaation. Great station civil service from whose job connections was like the executive person. Judicial rotation with independent I just have to process against and eliminate agency with democratic social practices should grant the government police forces loyalty. It's part of a broad test to see how far Trump can go. Show 25 Trump fire for style and civil service protections. For bureaucracy, we're showing different finds of civil service information. I can't just decide not force reasons. National security consistently exact president some test case social outrage get the rights. Overall, the president Trump went out to the technology of a large spectrum of national parties. It's a revision below collusion executive fire so beneficial so rights controls what we want. Court limited ability to fire around push back commercial shape and go all the way down unless the Trump party so far. Independent agencies, the most potent tool in the rogue executive arsenal is manipulation of bargaining. Kilo 24 recent focus on unitary executive assembly. Let us act post right goals to eliminate registry sex control system control. Achieve every single federal employee rights to change the world chance to we can use our federal words we don't have right. So we can use control the employees like control. Now policies enforceable collective bargaining and drives worker input in regulatory decisions stymieing aggrandizement. Show 25 CBRs prescribe how agencies higher value cannot be changed without consent to describe control negotiating access information for industry. The fact that they can just on higher preferential management rights, safety and regulation, representation regulation. That conflict as it cannot be forced to be legally effective or represented change one conditions. Wrong restrictions on concession power only uses establish all measure mechanisms operations. Resident regulations and prohibition requiring RF to full. Contract resistance by the federal workforce is the best and only option. Protections create electoral costs that dissuade power grabs, quality populace appeal. Then backstop authoritarianism. Blank 25 Trump, Alicia Rick Ball, and out of the guys trying to increase efficiency. Federal workers they not slow back up. And consolidation of authority goals shown harder. Fully goes over yes, small position of action. Ambitious and restrict the court check in significant way. Courts move slowly through intervention operations, taking short term people pay attention, grabbing control of the ground. This is a task. The next year, sounding workers in such terrorists or the boys are causing to the same play with which all for these to get out. You got military initiatives, administration always traditionally measuring these set of pushback meetings, still self-information only about encourage new power grabs. Populist power grabs go nuclear. Jackson trying to defeat religion, technology, nuclear war, military, kind of offensive. Minds that actually go to communication, because we're CCA, trying to escalation, misdirection, policy, active bureaucracy, nuclear, anti-monetization, international responsibility, dehumanization, fearful nuclear death violence. How to get off seeing people less vaccination, yes, like about nuclear treaties, until nothing for governors, spill over, get me more cards, unchecked Trump is existential, Homer Dixon, 24, Trump politics, sugar crisis, and response. Let's go away for a program of radical organizers reintroducing of those who are access to experiences with visibility care, functioning components. These voting machine checks and also diminish shock leverage of non-residents by crack and create state position. And then modify public social like case inflation, extreme wage sales, 10 million immigrants inflation, Trump was often data people every year support building normalized contributing innovation. Transition toward Taiwan Trump make message of somebody to go for Trump which leadership. The world lose coordination, money direction, and more free people tech comes down to president judgment and equality and vice versa. Trump is over justice and determining factor should legislate multi majority for all. On one side, authority for elections, on America's record order problems, policy sectors, security governments, no protections, trigger systemic crises, growth solves extinction, action record 24, tech brings prosperity, advances, drive resistance, possible plagues, virology, less likely side sentiments, emergent laws, AI development, long run tech carry hazard towards zero catastrophe to the wall. These celebrations, this increases growth hazard rate, and following a tech advances safety is a luxury good. Wealthier states have more than the economy, safer protective capacity, increase, motivate stranger policy, the future contains sequences, introduce some probability of catastrophe, slow growth makes a problem possible, fast growth increase willingness for safety, consider common policy directions, have long-term consequences, deceleration, worsen odds of survival. Decoupling now, wording 25, decoupling felt input traffic, reducing resource demand around the growth, has switching natural gas, distribution, from rising agricultural productivity. Warning at productivity ratio will sum this up.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Meantime. Okay. I want to start talking about the plan. It strengthens collective bargaining rights for workers in the federal civil service. Who does that? Which part?
Most likely Congress.
Most likely Congress.
But yeah, like there are a bunch of test cases that the plan could rule on, but it's most likely Congress has to Protect American Workers Act.
Okay, most likely the power. Got it. Okay. Advantage 1. So your internal link evidence is like basically just a card that the government needs to work well, and it kind of goes on like this more card just lists a bunch of reasons, like a bunch of things that the government does. Which part of this card is about CBR?
It says expertise is key. We have a raft of other evidence that says that CBR is key to that.
Okay, talk to me about those reasons. Why are bargaining rights necessary for experts to be in the government?
Yeah, so the Shulman evidence, the Moynihan evidence, and the Kellogg evidence, I think are our three best parts of this. The main warrant is not that federal workers need to stay in the government. We haven't made an internal about retention. Instead, it's about the workers who are still seeking it out in the midst of Trump's firing efforts. They need to be confident to speak up and express dissent.
Okay, confident to express dissent. Why won't they dissent now?
Because they're afraid of termination.
Okay, so like retaliatory firings
Yes,
is the internal
well, so
okay,
the
yep,
retaliatory
that makes sense
firings,
to me.
more importantly, they have to trust the protection that they have against that.
They have to trust the protections. Okay,
Yes.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Advantage 2, I'm a little confused here. So your evidence is about things like Trump using unitary executive theory to consolidate power. Your evidence says that an outgrowth of like believing unitary executive theory is true might be stripping bargaining rights. What card says restoring bargaining rights undoes unitary executive theory?
We think that so the plan may not result in like a spillover to get rid of the unitary executive theory. It does create a bunch of external checks on that. For example, electoral costs and the ability of bargain, or the
Wait, what
ability
do
of
you mean
federal workers.
electoral costs?
The block evidence says that providing federal workers protections in order to speak out against Trump allows them to expose material interests of voting for Trump or Trump-esque presidents in the future. Because like aggrandizement kills like
Okay,
Social Security, Medicare,
so
et
to
cetera.
clarify, it's like once again, like federal workers need to feel empowered to speak out.
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
first thing.
I
And the
wanna
second
follow
thing,
up about
the
that
short
though, like,
says that they
so
need to
federal
be
workers,
bargaining
I have a
rights.
question. Federal workers, like, post on Twitter about what Trump's doing and why that's bad and they disagree. Which voters does that prevent from voting for future
Blanc
Republicans?
is surprisingly good on this and says that it's sufficient to like shatter MAGA.
Wait, what? What line? Where is this?
It says that it would throw a major wrench into Trump's operations, and by taking their story to American people through attention grabbing, so you can confirm the American public that MAGA is a threat to Medicare, Social Security, Medicare,
That's
etc.
insane.
The material
Okay,
interest.
for sure. Wait, why do voters listen to Fed workers but not like the news currently?
Well, Fed
I feel like
workers are
everyone's
empowered to
saying
speak out in the news. Like, the whole point is that it allows federal workers to say,
Like
like,
the
to go
news
to
is full of
the
Trump's a threat. Like what do you think?
Yes, but
that's
that's,
different?
the blog says that the plan enables federal workers to sort of counter that kind of propaganda.
Counter propaganda, sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Can you pass this in?
Order is 6 off case, then a new solvency page, expertise, and overreach.
There you go.
So, seriously.
I said just got, let me open it now.
I'm so
I'm good.
First off, we see substantial means number of workers means 2%, they don't mean almost 8. The substantial change later percent of workers become self-employed and the other workers anyways, I'm not going to employers, then not federal government employees, business, which affects farmers, financial rules, brown and impossible subsistence employees, every coordinate generic, next office, CBR, but the next predominantly, the job fire, next federal workers, include based on just cost standard, and schedule F, schedule policy, career and reduction in force, working from home, establishment, was confidentiality, next rules, of course, by independent inspector general, publicly, national responsibility, except for investigation, prosecution, statute, incentive, increased financial rewards for responsibility, including the tax rates for all justice, responsibility, attorney fees, historical, all collective bargaining agreements, we need the effect as of January 1st, 2025, removing with the restoration, establishing new workers' councils, for dispute resolution and public mediation, that's also the case of restoring the uniform will be the 19. Confidentiality versus more so, therefore, report ID, office ID, the confidentiality saver, those more info, additional security, interconfidentiality, IRS, was more civil, was more IRS rulings, unjust firing, server 22, just as the these remains are due process before the voting, afterwards, we give notice of opportunity to be heard for investigation. That's the office of lobbying, decide 35 CRA organizations coming now, both unions, means lobbying for the policy anymore. Organized policy power that beyond the CBA, the central power, the economic, technical, the self create usable powers of the party, the law versus the protected, United Workers are key units on the country, you have to sign to drive policy at the national level. That's the same AI innovation also before. Policy is to trade tribal small business and private innovation and prevent new companies from emerging, effective releases, loss generation, innovation, and policy. The importance of policy after control is the important role of the ecosystem enforcer, but light touch policy get up unintended consequences. The USA lead prevents decisive Chinese military dominance decision after before. So the super intelligent those are welcome to CCPs. Ultimately, about music great versus the long entire reason. Only for so healthy living within market for not being years. Only learning need is dispatched down to regime that lead to the units that are designing advantages. We get their walk in the golf for finish. We'll be deciding enough to bring this together after stage determination. Complacent about China over to one of the CCP ways of vision. We need the CCP to compete. We need to assume that we love these people. We need the Chinese AGI first to recover the way. We need the security rules, markets, and power. We need the assessment for CCP advances. You'll do our business outside of the we need that to raise extra supplies by AGI. We need to enable news and mass that these ruling gets into right. Exposure like that. To be able to see what can make all the difference, you really how we have to struggle enough to run those construction areas. Next challenge. Next off is T pre-existing. To strengthen means increase ability to overcome opposing. To strengthen means increase ability to overcome opposing interest. Increase the strength of our ability to overcome opposing interest. The strong almost absolute right to increase the role of strength. They require the designing decision for protection, violation, the accuracy, new rights, formation, focus, grounding, administration. Of rights, new categories that are disaster protect. For instance, research. Next off is the executive cabinet, the executive branch of the United States government. To rescind the executive orders, the States Federal Workers' Government, including Executive Order 14251, Executive Order 14148, and Executive Order 14171. That solves my 125,000 stuff with the power to revoke executive orders. The term also orders bypass the next office is shutdown. Shutdown is a verdict that requires justice for only considered hardliners on Monday. No need to require the plan to be the first on the books which shatters it. Carney and Tully back then is 130. The Senate theory passed over the shutdown five problems against him. This put the Senate to order shutdown. This house lawmakers are out of town instead of letting trouble. A fast track money that would require 2/3 majority. The fact that sanctions from concerned hardliners would vote against Senate changes. Labor law is inherently contentious. 136. Consider the legal scholars were medical that they're considered already no needs and words of corporate harmony views that are reflected in Washington by IT policies or technical corporation and those in charge of political makeup. These new laws enforcing we were reflecting that on a rifle in the chamber and will the means change major questions rise but the shutdown specifically would destroy the economy was 1% of the US under in the longest shutdown period on the brink sector shutdown will hit the markets differently from the power shutdown is going to about funds people like economic agencies that labor reports monthly job inflation unemployment inquiry is here because we're going to detest everything from that policy we can change investment decisions coming out labor creative factors involved in economic uncertainties we budgets will long shutdown to national overall will bring youth each week, the solvency page. One CPR is relevant for 25 judges. Has failed to assess the company's agency. We're not running back partners of works, so we have a 6 over. See, one of the next leading workers by the end of the year, companies which had 8% annually, they are people back in recent weeks, employees who are being offered their jobs back. 2 didn't test, only 25%. EFG 24, 8, running the last for us, who's running the budget, also 25.1% of every reaching new. The employees is 23, the absence of 0, federal workers, innovation of pay benefits, hiring and firing, set by statute, EFG 25, innovation of pay benefits, hiring and decisions for the legally barred from tracking G0. The 19, this month, the federal workers, that's why there's no direct banks, OPM can be thrown individual, it's for forever. 5, it's too late, everyone's already left to see fulfilled. We have this sort of way with performance that's running the Fed, this is every 2,000 who is in my office, nearly 105,000 people lose right, 18% sure to come shut down. Full some agencies processing of 35,000 requirements, 6 RIF smoke the plan, the all 25 workers from the get a lead, require mass regulatory work to give their jobs back, 7 regulation funding company, workers who have the post-nation of 25 from the notion that the content of the constitution, limit the government to the courts by workers, the allies from sacrifice, public vendors, and the embassy, the most aspects of register agency sharing, the slashing and defending work decisions, grease the wheels of road sharing basement, sharing the comments, 8 courts out, wage to the 25 for provide customers with the advanced ability, agency is from the right line, direct acquisition, information, power, digital brands, other than the agency power, the corner, most secret rates and money losses, we then see the function of the Fed, 9 reasons people are Trump kicking, people have views or the silent about Trump others, we have managed to avoid using the word Trump again, we would get something later, 5 no from general counsel or the form of the FLRA means that absolute is 0, they do not control flexibility, it's planet, it's release. One no advocacy impact maybe that's what you were many people get that's what they hear about the embassy the important shortcomings having some of the group in their mechanisms the also people is disasters as a standard operating procedure policy they know sets up some of the articles when the ideas receive no perfect efficiency disconnected from reality or susceptible to believing in the social issues to play by overconfidence are considerable comments depending on this bureaucratic machinery to no poly versus impact measures for the components of the event the complex rules is vulnerable to not we mean the progress ironic because people do that they will be resisted I'm going to use like if they exist all the shocks in the past few years the capital the global situation also exactly as this is a high risk running with solve the versus moments that are massively happening. Then the global system of global capital push back against social supply chain. Innovation tries to have to reverse themselves. They decide to nurture the and the negative social dysfunction society. Deeper falls into production that one press will lead to negative feedback effects. This is a company for sure. It's cute. 3 no solvency. Every impact below from money had has word salad turtle links. If you cannot read a coherent sentence in the card doc, you try every story on turret low. 4 all causes to bonus that they cannot solve. We're doing that very. We're not trying to take over Gaza. We have to remember that everything that Gaza it's obviously should be some proposals. Better all each other's industry and so on. We won't get it. That's obviously and others proposing case of essential powerful substances. Narratives the U.S. is a real threat. Also, they have no way of explaining what terrorists become, what motive, etc. It means there is no way that they declare nuclear terror and they will not get nuclear materials through the TSA. 5, the HSS already terminated its contracts with the staff agreement. 25, the TSS terminated its contracts without a reason. We can back the CDC and the FDA. 6, the CDC structurally June Miller. And Miller 23, it's actually confusing. Decision CDC field. And the hammering effective positive media version of trust science. And these are one CDC searching for the version. CDC is making us unravel and effective harmful decisions. It's not really for rule of law. 7, pandemics do not cause extinction. Publish 23, pandemic. So not they try to humanity saying that the immune system body defended defense and have tools treatments, vaccine, social distancing, we're not help us change. Our fate, 8, no great impact on hardening solve GDO. With the percentage of whether events use, we're going to push for the reliability initiatives, transmission needs to the one of interstate lines to ensuring updates are resilient, grants programs such as speeding 2 billion to states, grants improve visibility of the system, enhance communication policies, cascade resilience. 9, they do not solve climate change, Trump bureaucracy, staff and deniers, but conceded public solves climate change, which is science coasters, no impact, but agencies are cooking anyways, which means you want to climate and harder the government is for small is important. Climate doesn't instead of the base. Climate law impossible to do anything large and meaningful to report doing the EP's ability to regulate carbon. 11 is the U.S. scientific expertise is cooked anyways. 25 recent political mentions are getting present future research and building. We're in science now since possible benefits. Universities and research agencies that the decades of probably losing research scientists who have to flee or give up in science. More than 75% of attendance. Actually 12, no economy internal link. Money hand is not defended independence. No one. There has to be it's question of statutory 30 under the Humphreys case. 13 American trust in government is dead. No, 24 Americans all trust the government. They trust the government to do what's right most of the time for our government. 58 with 73% of firm trust. Overreach. 1, unions cannot check Trump every impact on when it comes to authority over nuclear weapons, which unions do not influence and Trump is not here. Both the average tells him 2, Congress is already trading Trump. 2, the Congress is funding facts, more powers, muscle companies with the Rock for authorization to present the Congress is called back. More authorizations since 1971 and first. Significant measurement times in 2002 building and authorization to begin Congress starting to take this seriously out there. No muscles and the less states, all already working to flex them further. Massey and launch a bill to repeal the chance to vote IOMF. 3, no Trump last year, he never risked national suicide. Plus, the measure says no Trump for all 25,000. Because the position actually executed launch makes a different measure that are national marketing popularity than you have. Something no one can they actually want a weapon in reference to the military. Believe they use against civilians to be unlawful. Those would be required to be unlawful orders. Those are support. No first use of around caution and trade percentage of arguing in favor of limitations has risen for over 50.5 of in order for 40% openly they would refuse. 4, no nuclear populace in the background. 1, that's 22. They populace believe the nuclear danger is not our drawbacks to the destruction. They not being saturated Modi. Both sides ideas from the national army that Modi and Trump do not see and hiding with nuclear danger or press. Audiences that nationally understand it because they pursue nukes in response to the negative China no go. The wrong Ukraine more important drivers. There's always been concerns about American commitments and 3 days Trump alliances remain strong in fortune and he's making this so going. Therefore, both even in power for decades. One question always about populism. Blue wave inevitable, Mitchell, and all 19, no, accurate, global jobs, 45%, Republicans, 43%, the elections are tomorrow, jobs, 47%, Republicans, 46%, of the White House, full party, Republicans will be otherwise, so that those will translate to that's an active Republicans are Trump, that's asking more difficult.
I guess you can
the surveying and after stuff, the turnover voter identity, or crucial level, the year to the elections have sold a very slim advantage.
Okay.
So I'll send that.
Yeah.
Okay, we can start with that here.
Yeah.
Okay, status?
Conditional that we can kick links.
You can't kick links.
Yep.
Okay, shutdown is that. Is the link about PC, bipartisanship, if so, who's PC, etc.?
All of the above, in terms of the main link that we identified is that it would be a bipartisanship breaking. The Carney evidence says that the insertion challenges.
Wait, is it just about the House?
Sorry?
Is it just about the House?
It's both. It's primarily about the House, but we think that
the House literally passed the plan and then it didn't go through the Senate.
well, first of all, it's a question of liberal being politically contentious. We think that as a result of the way the House would have to repass it, and then they would, but it also includes the Senate. The dissent is about the Senate too. The Senate is about the Senate.
Okay, so whose political capital is key in the Senate?
So first of all, it's a question of the way that Johnson relates to people like Jackson's in the Senate. I know, you didn't let me finish. The way that Johnson's relationship is built with the Senate, in terms of the way that he and the Republican Party is managing relations with people like Jeffries in the Democratic Senate.
Okay, so a bill that is popular is already passed the House, gets introduced in Congress. Who doesn't vote to reopen the government that would have voted?
Yeah, so it's primarily about conservative hardliners. Our evidence says that it's uniquely prepared. There's like all it really takes is 1 or 2 members, is what our uniquest evidence says. We think there are people who are part of the moderate party, people who are part of the HFC who would dislike the plan.
Okay, so they would so conservative hardliners universally dislike labor policy. Your evidence says labor law, like everyone hates labor law. Why wouldn't they just all agree that the plan is bad? Like why would they abstain from voting on, reopening?
So I think a couple of things. One, our evidence uniquely speaks to the incentives in terms of funding challenges and being willing to challenge Trump. We think right now in the status quo, lawmakers are taking incremental approaches to, challenge Trump because Trump is largely reliant to a lot of these people's re-election capabilities. We think that as a result of labor law, it's not that it's just gonna look. We hoped that Congress people are more rational than they are. If anything,
Okay,
we think they're more.
why is this shutdown unique?
Yeah, the Woods evidence uniquely talks about the impact of economic data assets due to things such as politicization that are already occurring. It specifically says, quote, that teetering on the brink of another recession or a shutdown right now will, quote, hit the markets differently. This is because the economy is already volatile and poor data access means that unemployment, access to investment data, etc., would only be worse.
Okay, AI lobbying disad, what evidence says the US beats China now?
The Action Amendment Court.
Where?
Quote,
So, like, if
CCP has a clear path to being competitive. Only American lead is.
Yeah, it says like American lead is good. Okay.
Quote, it also says many seem complacent about
Okay.
China. However, when the CCP wakes up, we should expect the CCP to be lines we highlighted in red.
Okay, Huddleston evidence just says, or why do regs hurt innovation?
A couple of different things. One, it means that there's a costly patchwork, which means that it is harder for firms to be able to innovate due to adhering regulation. Second is perception. Our part says investment decreased by 36% in the past. Third is warrants like path dependency, which means that AI's systems are uniquely challenged in certain ways.
I'll give an order once it's sent. Can I get to the stand?
My word was first.
Mine is also blue. So we'll take a look.
Here's the state.
Alright, so my word just crashed, so I'll give it an order in a second. Actually, I can just give the order now while it reloads. It's advantage 1, expertise. Advantage 2, overreach. Then solvency. Then T subsets. T strengthen. The exact counterclaim. The advantage counterclaim. The shutdown DA and the AI logging DA. Does anybody want that again?
Civil service dysfunction is active to competent management of disease, nuclear war disaster, the environment, but effective federal workforce, caps that impact that shoulder improvement. Think is about how pseudoscience. John's 11 to John's in 11 to agreement says self shaky, biblical 30 number 7 20 years, we don't think it, the phenomenon real genesis, everything is all, intelligence of giant groups of notice the fact you think it's place, there's other just variables are powerful, interest with the rules guided by intelligence experience. Yes, white parts of defense is not assumed Trump 2.0 and intervening actions fail with a robust US admin say yes, nuclear defense is not assumed the security vulnerabilities created by layoffs, bypassing defense about means causing new war, contribution, that's our real motivation to make improvement. Now, cut it off, no all causes. They don't get nukes unless they're sold from the US. Yes, these impact future the breakouts. Bypass immunity, opposing immunity, the defense is not assumed. The globalization that's sweet, spread that's they give the afterings back at HSS and CDC. Contracts out of the casino, grid of warming impact, expertise is not permanently dead. The words of the people leaving the US and cuts, but the plan lobbies Congress to reverse and employment data is overinflated. That's what Schumacher evidence with the one you see. Yes, econ impact. Doctor makes a great power conflicts, makes great powers conflict road. Defense is reviewed by hard data. It is not assumed US China through city trap, which makes citizens the unique risk that's strong. The absolute set trust in the government through accountability, transparency. And it's also relevant because we have hedge impact over the overreach advantage. Platforms without ways, not controls. Combined with the loyalists feeling guarantees ethnic nationalism goes nuclear. The first use makes all treaty violations. The attraction of Congress is not solving to abuse super majorities. Well, always default to Trump. It's also not about the plan. Yes, last out. It's not assumed Venezuela was free religion. While Garcia ways Trump the shadows out of the global rule of lock ops alliance separates and provokes the global religion. between Russian and Chinese swimming independently. Centralization makes the conversion of environmental and nuclear risk inevitable. And then the walking and miscal best. Corporates and debts lose to travel job. And the lead just if you want to check your American economy tendencies. They don't make any inclusive goes to the current. Section 2. It won't solve the case, they'll veto, not durable. Electoral essentially they didn't make the argument in the 1 and C's we get new answers. Now, solvency. CBRs are not irrelevant. Workers are not coming back and no evidence says they'll express expertise without CBRs. Union density low is irrelevant. The point is that it was enough to assess expertise back then, so we'll be post-plan. We don't have to negotiate over what the AFGE says because the showing evidence says that staffing is enough and protection during mandatory discretion is enough for them to speak up when they're asked. That's Kellogg. They don't have to strike that was above. Not everyone left in DC and no RIFs. No RIFs. Schumacher's the BLS data is overblown, which and most are seeking it out. No funding cuts. They can bargain for experts to come back and preferentially hiring that sure. That's what matters. And congressional lobbying also solves it. That's the handler of the 1 EC court. Is not of course not a way argument is not about expanding regulations or agency function. Unions will not be pro-Trump. Their card proves our argument on the counterplan because it says that they'll kiss the rings of the status quo where they don't have bargaining, no circumvention, durable fiat mandates, and effective alpha right, anything else with good faith implementation. And the outcome possible is key to ground. We get new answers. T subsets. We may control Trump's solid worker preventing economy-wide infringement, and any worker could be a civil servant. Plain and vacuum is the most direct residual competition. That's people pay substantially does not apply any numerical cutoff. Government is not culture over that. President residential is not allowed for calculation. Increases even that is more than little. But let's agree, workers only prefers the more than one worker. They can hold as a worker employee or people who are employed in industry that prefer one precision or evidence reflects plain meaning. Independently, it's across substantially because substantial modified striking CDRs not work with the that makes up rights at least 2% stronger. 2 half-ground picks out of individual workers, localities, or municipal sectors are unbeatable. Any economy-wide box on innovation. 3 or limiting. 1 half is unworkable, leaving a sitting duck same for the functional limits check states and formula, and natural limits independently topic is injury politics. Of course, economy is spillover, river reasonability, keeping interpretation, causal race, and bomb carrying out substance. Photo workers are employees according to federal statute. Federal rate, no data employee is an individual employee in agency, and the worker who's an employee in agency has easy because of any will be, but also it's not a real resolution, so it doesn't matter. That's the most precise. They distort what workers are in the first place. T strike. We meet the plan striking the right to collectively bargain by making federal workers' bargaining rights more absolute and able to overcome the opposing interests of national security. That's the one C Shulman was planned in vacuum. They modify what we do striking collective bargaining rights means removing the social solution to bargaining. Shulman to manufacturing protection and eliminate the original solution. The original is up to protection. There should be every over any to work and then black classification for striking bargaining rights ensure all workers receive protection should need to be removing the restrictions on it. For one predictability, their evidence is about high secret and rights in Australia and certain below to background recording absolute exclusive condition and encouragement and competitive and box out innovation against overpowered next generics. Functional limits and finite workers check abuse and reasonability. The executive cabinet permanent to vote permanently have any agent constructing collective bargaining rights. Public public performance executive boards of government for labor rights money include losses during CBR agencies and power to provide percentage of labor organization which is labor rights sold in labor country. Agency picture or a voter no deficit kills topic innovation links that benefit the right that takes the blame which spills over to fights which delays the shutdown bill. It's not credible since it's perceived as a continuation of trust regulatory flip-flopping. External checks solve better. Certainty is key. Executive retaliation so they'll need to fully trust rights. That's more how black girl trade expertise comes to white mass range during the fed up challenge of workers who can possibly review workers who would other free on a job that the rights of the foster job that beginning last the shutdown. The advantage counterplan permanent to vote. It shields politics and habits of the popularity of Georgetown plans backlash. Permanent the campaign hundreds of other contracting span eliminate strangers. Copying off ground education research. This will solve the firms and pigs instead of benefit the counterplan of structure Trump or benefits workers. We get an infinite new answer to the block of tax choices or takes place to the counterplan social policies. Beyond action, just federal peace, copying off ground. Working is key. 1. Trust workers think implement risk. Load on paper promises. Organized representation is the key reinforcement mechanism. That's why they insisted it was essential. That's Heather Moynihan and civil servants. Legal expertise protections are insufficient. The system collapses. Unions are empirically helpful and affiliated. That's Kellogg. Win rates proved. Unions provide civil servants and disputedly well-financed defense that individual employees cannot afford. That's Handler, especially in the face of conservative supermajorities, which enter circumvention as well. 2. Spillover. Unions can lobby and litigate. The individual employees cannot. That's Handler. Specifically, only unions grant workers sweeping control over staffing practices. Backstopping lawyerism. That's Shirt and Kellogg. 3. Workaround. Civil service protections only cover entry and removal. CBNs cover everything in between. Making in scientific integrity requirements and safeguards against punitive transfers. That's Handler and Jordan. 4. Productivity. The process of collective bargaining calls unproductive disputes using efficiency. Black River collapse admin function. Ubiquity anti-agreements and dissatisfaction. Agreements with and has positive organizational outcomes and professional regulations. There's elbow the 3 union management upward communication agreements with the service and agreements lower normal efficiency rules under efficiencies and actual productivity. You have the organization agreements that'll it's also been reduced and then working engagements on national rights acts and collective bargaining is essential for international harmony. Making a strong action for what is employees and maintaining harmony relationship and reducing unnecessary performance on an efficient battle for effective harmony relationship and survival. The just cause fails. Employment law without union protections on certain lacks veto backing which is waiting and dissent ending central law fails. Experts are not confident that unions shut down and figure out future pressure could pursue similar action in the future. Durable checks ensure containment. Working from home fails. Advanced makes federal jobs a little pushier, but does not check aggrandizement or generate confidence. And expertise protections. Whistleblowing fails. Experts only value if they bargain for it. Otherwise, it's received the favoritism and it's less trusted. That's Handler. Independently, the scope of protections uncertain and only protects speaking out against legal non-compliance, not the policy things, and also does not shield partisan violence. And units create communal backing, which is more certain than one of legal battles. The restore CBA's plan. The links to the benefit. This is just the plan. We get new interest in this debate, and has no solvency advocate. Workers' councils, the worker councils fail. It sets up venues to conflict, but they're unfamiliar and lack communal settings that we place as are key. The shutdown team. One passed at 11 a.m. today, Speaker. Has the original membership majority in the House the laws that lose more than one vote, but members of the extreme right refuse to agree with negotiation and bring us an impact. Some are playing politics about this 18 cases of fleeing hostage. Absolutely, a durable fiat requires keeping the government open. No votes looking at 16 investments to pursue beyond the control and with President President of the party and law, you can consider by the champion president exercise in the rest, not ensuring the laws apply regulation of the policy maker to the plan and pass the bill, but popular if you can the lower term to secure the members of the coalition of the brigade centers, the House legislation by President Swerve, joint issuance with the House Republicans and all of the last are immediately on board. That's proven by the passage of powwow. The word powwow already passed the House, which causes fights. Winners win. The House 2021 evidence suggests that public integrity system no violence ability to not only agree with policy institution these defend the ability to read and move as control. The permanent institutions but enter free until the free passage of some and pass the further others are just fear mongering. Get out of here. Regulations for adaptive transfer and effective balancing and effectively balance up and down central 25 actions that cover carry for most features of methods include the state of the moderating code fixes and total systems solving the problem between the current charges systems are effectively on safety and capabilities arise out particularly and assuming that the should have confidence in regulation and enforcing criminalize that realize making it possible through AI not arising across that regulation can compel and better changes that however analyze evidence that are saying that policies are created breaches cycle through the fact that we're amending initial intervention building coalition and arrest protection data is not a simple innovation deregulation causes multi-planar backlash that nullifies any benefits taking 25 that less than change happening as you and the big activities bringing anxieties about everything that the US the sacrifices and the center will lead to moving back will become challenging. Controls are especially inevitable, but will be onerous, arbitrary, misapplied to regulation now and should take off. 725 the question should not be whether should be regulated, the question is whether something that the default would be regulated through governing currency, interest toward other than these accomplish goals out of the regulation of other simply do moving if accommodation is not makes it okay lack of nature makes them difficult to understand. Some regulation of enforcement agency you understand will be chill over and collaboration program can be presumable that the years before we have done some primary rates will be unbended and equivalent limited the option of right action to allow administration to work effective control is bolster innovation through first mover incentives, market dynamics and legal uncertainty, culture which back out that formula progresses in company every or regulatory response to regulations to innovation, obviously compliance, constant enhancing performance and innovation responsibility placed in the first mover innovation and the innovation trust the wider adoption of check and willingness of higher percentage handle on the monopolistic effects of compliance already can through innovation for all regulation great uncertainty, giving enabling of that company innovation is something will forget it's backwards regulation optimize American development and prevents accidental systems failure. Halo and 1211 airport running energy for the part of data and then defense can hit the high end of the regulators and can shut down the decentralized markets are and the readiness to so though any high where the right auditing systems testing and after those standards loving to bring up the regulation and striking through the rules and not and so that is the tech industry now models are present secure issues of the regulation standards are trying to tackle are not socially from the defense of the area table and the weakness of creative charts that over time Pulaski evidence is AF and like unions union induced practices established best practices and regulatory successes and really verified insert one seat evidence in green we don't have to read it because it's their card such from Cato and since 24 the Cato is garbage from the Robinson 18 and Cato can urge that if you was the sound good they will never know what other findings and the critical evidence will be ignored that the Republican show the same as the laws that Cato studies that can never be cited or can never be trusted. I'm good.
Okay. Alright, I want to start off by talking about the counterclaim.
Which one?
The CDR pick.
Okay.
So this card that you've tagged talk about win rates. The handler evidence specifically says the data it is citing is from 1979 to 2022. Includes that it's not assumed that Trump.
That's not true. Like the handler evidence describes trends over recent presidencies, including Trump and Reagan.
Let me read you a line, but quote: this section presents 986 FLRA adjudications spanning from 1979 to V 2022. Quote: I reviewed support that the Trump-appointed FLRA was uniquely hostile.
Included
because
examples until 2022.
Right. So the 1AC has forwarded a claim that says that the Trump environment is uniquely devastating, and we are seeing the FLRA or labor rights being stripped.
Yeah.
Why do you think win rates that were pre this environment?
Do you think Trump was do you think this is Trump's first term ever?
But no, but you, the 1AC
You think
has
that 27
okay, so then why
is encompassed by
then why didn't any of like Trump's
because they got rid of the FLRA in collective bargaining, but you said that when it is upheld, win rates fall.
Right, but that is not what your card says. Great. Okay, the spillover argument.
You decided that the first Trump term was solved. I don't know.
Why? What is the impact to lobbying and litigating? Where has the 1AC said that lobbying and litigating unlocks it?
Handler says that lobbying. Well, okay. First of all, to be clear, you said on the dissent that the plan lobbies for effective regulations. You can see the full weight of that claim, which proves that the plan
okay,
was
so
able
but
how
I just want to see.
Well, I just don't think you get deficits about this, given that you said that federal workers.
Right. I'm asking you what impacts are he. Well, that's fine. Clearly is done. I want to talk about this, the 1AC group real quick. This Moore card, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm a bit confused how you think you have an internal link into anything.
So
since the markets collapsed, internal links. Let's quote: markets collapse. firings and financial watchdogs grind econ to a
Yes,
halt.
so it says
What do you think that
a lack of-
means?
So it says that a lack of financial expertise within the civil service makes downturns more likely. The plan solves that through preferential rehiring practices and enabling financial analysts to speak up because they're not afraid of Trump striking them down or firing them because they're
Okay.
speaking up.
In terms of trust, the Panther, Monian, and Sue evidence
Yeah.
does indicate that civil service workers feel that they don't have stable jobs or protections made the government worthwhile. Where do you think it distinguishes between collective bargaining rights and other employment protections?
Yeah, there's a line, let me find it. Okay, so the first thing is that federal workers view the solely merit system as a euphemism for favoritism and saw collective bargaining as an alternative that advanced stricter application of employment rules, which proves that empirically the reason why collective bargaining exists in the first place is because civil servants lobbied for it because they thought it would be less meritocratic, or not less meritocratic, but less likely to be staffed by Trumpies, or less likely to be staffed by people who were favorites by the president. That's just like a direct line.
Only theory was condo and then
Condo and aging economics, correct.
3, 10. Yeah.
Can you send me the doc with all the facts and stuff? Or is it anything? Yeah. I can do this one. Or, do you, I mean, that will help us. You can try it now.
Yeah.
Save it to the document.
and doc is loading. The order is the CBR pick. Then the shutdown VA. The solvency page. Oh wait, sorry, I didn't realize you were writing.
That's okay. CBR peg, shutdown, solvency.
Yeah, and then advantage 1, advantage 2. Okay, I'm running it to check.
Just,
You did not just say.
there is a thing in my bottom right that said message. No, I did actually just get it.
Just get this.
Let me
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay. Cyrus, you also did?
Yeah.
Okay, panel. Okay, awesome. I don't have a timer. It's so fun. Alright. The Cattlemen solves the case numbers for the 84 machine as to where the CBR is approved by the they do not have more than only CBR does so, and they certainly don't have the words to the Cattlemen means the marginal difference in efficiency or expertise is not get done because it cannot be connected to an impact that outweighs the net benefit. Independently, only the Cattlemen solves the case. The plan leaves the outcome of machine's Cattlemen 18 and like the swatch police station. Labor law is the bargaining, the law is all other regulation, work rights, criminal lists, and all mechanisms of regulation, litigation, chief, and land law. There are 6 collective bargaining. The Cattlemen solves both advantages. Plank 1 establishes fire protections for workers, including a just cause standard that solves by jumping ahead to the likely conclusion of their CBAs and also eliminates Schedule F and Schedule Policy Career, which is what most of their evidence is about. Solves the first advantage by keeping experts in place. Plan 2 permits working from home, which boosts working conditions. Plan 3 solves whistleblowing, which is a bigger issue with the entire case, provides whistleblowers legal protections, covers all attorneys' fees, and financial incentivizes them to come forward. That's sufficient to ensure checks on road bureaucracy. Plan 4 solves CBAs by restoring all prior contracts that were canceled and ensuring they never expire. That resets agencies to January 2025 without giving them the rights to bargain or form unions in the future. Plan 5 says labor comments. The mediation because it establishes worker councils where they can vent disputes, but does not give the rights to bargain over the implementation due to Cattlemen severs CBR, but limits T. 5 that LB provides no right to bargain with the wage job conditions. Severance is the voting issue for fairness and clash unconditionality based on engagement possible. Implementation can be links to that benefit because it includes the plan's grade of the union form conditionality is going to be only did one is like flex due to an following options to goal, which are outside bias and current sandbagging, especially on this topic because strength is expansive. There's broad mechanism diversity, they get labor provides good and they get subsets. 2 is logic rule of neg. Is this for the app happens to get option cost when the Cattlemen's bad stuff with the app's good? Or for the work career logic keeping in terms of the app operation, just judge by judge take 3 is research testing app is language advisor offers with size and argument quality. Research skills and makes more flexible narrowing down the blocks of the with the breath 4 is no offense diminishing marginal utility. After speaking last, classify reasonability from topicality. What we did was extremely reasonable. It was only 2 counter plans. 5, it's not a vendor 0 residential basis, which makes it arbitrary and causes substance credit. Outdoor 6 with counter plans. 2 is inevitable because of T-shells. This has residuals and it's good. It forces 2 to make decisions, but this one is also more often arbitrary. Leads to absurd results in the negative always force limitations. The next argument was the counter plan must be a policy. It is. Do not identify a plan that isn't. If they do that, we will answer it, but a theory argument without a violation is not an argument that I have to answer. Next argument, which trust the counter plan solves it empirically. It's better than a reversing Trump's decision because it enshrines statutory protections for workers through the counter plan tax. It includes things like announcing these protections, financial inducements, and covering all litigation fees for workers who come forward to report complaints. That is sufficient. The cards they cited for this are all terrible. The William have evidence says that the lack of protection stifles dissent. The counter plan solves that by firing protections which prevents retaliation and coercion and allows workers to dissent the Trump administration. The handler and sue cards are about 1 recruitment, which the counter plan solves, which is below, and 2 political pressure, which is solved. The environmental protections. The handler card is indicting previous merit protections solves the counter plan, which includes covering litigation and power. Whistleblowers' next argument was win rates. It's irrelevant. The counter plan circumvents the need for them because it protects them in other ways. The lobbying argument, we are impact turning. They said it's good to get to the end point of the counter plan, which we do directly by simply feeling it, but it proves yes linked to the DA. Workarounds argument is wrong. The CBA spent solves it. It resets contracts to pre-Trump, which includes things like scientific integrity provisions, but they cannot create this portion of the counter plan because giving the contracts back in place is not the same as bargaining. Since contracts do not bargain, next argument is disputes no impact to them if the workers being struggled is inevitable, but it's not essential, and the counter plan solves it. By addressing the root cause of working conditions and environmental protections, but unions don't solve it either. Workers to be freed. The union government legislate install, telling them they don't have the right to leave and then lose wages and benefits. The fact that employees could opt out. Next argument was certainty. Just cause is certain. That is the result of their CBAs. So this links to them to the counter-just fiat directly presidential philanthropic is wrong. There's no rollback in the durable fiat. Otherwise, Trump undoes the plan as well, which nukes the case with the war protection solve that was above. Their evidence is terrible. It says that union support was the lower efforts, not that they are key to it. It's weak solve policy. The internal link to policy direction is workers speaking up, which they will do if they have firearm protections. The CBA argument is not linked to that benefit because contracts in this is the rights to bargain, and they said on the case that the rights to bargain is key to lobbying, which we have conceded work council plan absolutely solves. That was explained above. Now the rest of their 1AC cards that they think say CBRK are absolutely wrong. I'll go ahead and indict them here so the 1 year does not get to explain that the Kella evidence says that workers want a safe and stable workplace, which the counter solves. The joining evidence of CB is good because it allows workers to report wrongdoing. Whistleblowing solves that. The shoemaker card is a net card. It says workers are staying because they love their jobs, which is plan is not necessary. The shirk evidence is on the moon, and he's a conservative hack. He says the CBA's crazy regulations, that's in the context of working conditions that CBA is enshrined, and the fact that CBR is negotiated means the plan does not result in CBAs that go against Trump negotiation priorities in the first place. That'll be solvency. The block argument is just workers key, not CBR key. Politics. Zero turn, they said the plan already passed the House, conceded, that means the plan popular and winners win is irrelevant. The plan is not a win in the House because no means it's just Senate passage, so they do not build bipartisanship or cause China to pass, but Senate passage is disastrous. It gets vetoed here, so HPC's House, that's the public object of members of the Chicago Library, they said that I'm giving their votes for the unions, and I have the laws and break the deficit, and that's true, it's better starting to feel what it really didn't say union busting, congressional override makes Trump look weak, causes him to attack Iran buzzing, and 161 Trump attack Iran, Trump, civilians living towards like whole actors, they're still like Trump, military communities, attack his retail, or goes on from us. Trump switches to the Middle East, he is up here weak, Trump is having gold is motivated, which is something as Trump plans for. Now that causes World War III, producing 26 acts, Iranians, producing social regions, spiral on nuclear states, for libraries, their own unity might not survive, bombing of Iraq, triggered that World War III, Prussia, India, and China's World War III, for middle of war class many years, but the bill also passes now, so no turn, voters, and 2-1 Johnson believes that the Republican votes in confident will do it. By Tuesday, more evidence living heart in 131 will shut down has been described with the House, comes over changes, but the United President's introduced by sure, Republicans over the majority considerable vote, by pretty long vote conservatives more than could withhold if the demands are met. Salty. Plan is too late. Tons of workers have already left to take a new job, which means that a lack of workers in place makes their protections irrelevant. The people exposed to how vulnerable federal jobs were, which impacts recruitment, because a single congressional decision won't change that. It's irreversible. Roosevelt in 25, the research and cost jobs to leave, which so long compensated for political financial upside are going to be irreversible. Plus, voluntary leaving outweighs the plan. Thousands have retired or accepted buyouts, and they won't come back, which is the 1AC evidence. Plus, shut down voluntary quitting, so between 5,000 and 5,000 shut down. 3,000 will be on the theory because of voluntary, 6,000 of voluntary separation, but they do not solve regulations and funding cuts outweigh the plan. The proposed evidence says that regs are being gutted and funding is being slashed. This means that having experts in place who are able to speak up is irrelevant because there are no regulations for them to enforce because the Trump administration is zeroing all of them, but unions will absolutely be screwed Trump in case the ring. That's the Kagan evidence. It's fantastic. It isn't just about private sector unions, plus they lack resources and skills to mobilize against violence and wanted resources actually scratch that card. The courts also pull out the affidavit side right with Trump, the MPD, and Chevron. That's the Shakila evidence. They're too slow and Trump will ignore them, which proves when Congress passes the bill, there's no upholding of it. So in 25, the courts will be limited to how Trump is being vice the courts can't. Trump is up to willing to ignore court rulings and threaten to impeach judges they don't like. Consider you say a judge really lawful order being the courts will consider months now actions were unlawful and impossible to reconstitute the agency. Now go to advantage one. They do not solve any internal link. This is all predicated on this more card, which is one, not about bargaining. It is about Trump and Musk's erratic actions, which are brought up from the plan. We recreate the liability of institutions, robust oversight, and rule of law. Trump and Musk's actions are weakening these pillars. I do not think this passes the control F test, but two, they obviously do not have an internal link to most of this stuff because it's highlighted into word salad. Each paragraph has about 6 words highlighted total. No economy internal link. The 1AC says the following markets collapse, firings at financial watchdogs, grind econ to a halt. That is not an argument. And the 2AC straight drop. This card is about Fed independence, which does not matter because federal workers do not have collective bargaining rights, and there are tons of other all causes that they don't solve. The terror impact, they don't solve it. Motivation for terror is inevitable because groups want to attack the U.S. motivated by things like religion or nihilistic worldviews, but they cannot solve it. The TSA sucks for a job. Left in 25, since most criminal understaffed, since ever. Then back to manifest testing rates were embarrassing, but there's no impacts to it. It's way too difficult, and their evidence is that maybe people steal nukes. That's impossible because even if they were to steal them, they cannot detonate them or cause them to go off. Also, if they drop that the CDC sucks at their job, they're understaffed, underfunded, and are insufficient at collecting data or getting people to do what they say, which is proven by people refusing mask mandates during COVID. That means the disease impact is zero, and they don't get a try or by decision because they drop the internal take out that totally zeros. That zeros it. They kick to the climate stuff. So whatever the Fed. That's actually fine. Okay. Overreach. Zero internal link. Their best report is short rating about how unions control regulations. He is a hyper-conservative working for the Trump administration and is intending to write in that article. Obviously, unions do not sign which regulations get implemented, but even if the rich agreement agencies just ignore ignore the Federation 55 HCA, unilaterally implement nor completely ignore the union, this is outside or general council, they have zero ability to influence anything, both within 125 such as defense management, responsibility management, includes other professional organization, practices side work, actions to your directions, you can say, cannot bargain over the substance of the agency's decision. Bargaining is just making mouth shit like sweatpants, very short, 55. Bargaining is inherently protected from the agency's negotiations over right for something that people that ask else talking to bargaining cost billions. It does not make sense for this to be an internal link to Trump re-election or future populists. People are speaking out about Trump now, proven by literal mass protests in the streets in Minneapolis, and the fact that your Twitter stream is probably full of people saying that Trump's a moron and a disaster for the country. I have no idea why federal workers speaking out on that specifically is key, and the fact that they found one card that says it is not a real argument because that card does not compare it to the scope or give a warrant for why federal workers are key. It just says that people would listen to federal workers, not that they're not already going to vote against future populists now.
Are you?
Hold on, let me reset my timer. Yes, I'm in.
Okay. The CBR pick, okay, so the plank that says, like restore agencies and CBAs to their Jan 2025 level, what do you think is the difference between that and the plank?
Okay, so collective bargaining rights are the rights to engage in negotiations between an employee and an employer. The outcome of those negotiations is often the parties signing a contract, but the existence of the contract itself is not the rights to engage in
So the
bargaining.
argument is that they have the agreement, but like they don't have any of the rights that come with the agreement?
Yeah, so the result of the counterclaim is previous CBAs, they go back in effect, the contract is binding forever, but workers never get to renegotiate it. There's like no negotiation that ever happens in the future.
The Galvin evidence at the top, independently, only the counterclaim solves the case. Why do you think this says the counterclaim solves better than the plan fails?
Because the Galvin evidence identifies that in order for bargaining to be successful, parties have to agree, where employment law, i.e. like the counterclaim is kind of an example of that.
So it's like unions
just
won't
jumps
agree
in.
within themselves, but like individuals.
Well, there are
can
tons
solve
of things that could go wrong, right? Unions themselves could have like internal disagreement amongst workers.
Okay, sure.
Employers could
You
refuse to
said
come to the
that
table.
the right to bargain is key to lobbying. Why do you think that the counterclaim would not result in workers using lobbying or trying to lobby Congress?
Because the counterclaim does not restore the right to bargain, and you have
So
forwarded
your
as a
argument is that
see.
the only way that we can get workers to lobby Congress in favor of anything is the right to bargain.
So
correct?
importantly, this is a concession
Well, I
of the
understand
1AC.
that, but I just wanted to make sure that
The
we
one
agree.
AC forwarded that a reason,
Okay,
this is really
so
important, the one
clarify.
AC forwarded that a reason bargaining is key is because it permits unions to lobby.
Okay,
We are
okay,
conceding that, even if you don't think it makes sense, they said it, we conceded it.
Yes, and the counterclaim has no inroads to lobbying at all.
That's correct.
Okay. What else do you think is a net benefit to this other than lobbying bad?
Yeah, it's just the lobbying BA.
Okay.
Unlike, I
do you
guess,
think-
solves better if like you fuck up circumvention or whatever.
Do you think that the vetoes dissent is a net benefit as well?
Veto DA is probably not, no.
Okay. You said that unions will be pro-Trump. Why do you think that this assumes, or so this card that you read in the 1NC is from the status quo, and says that because without, like it seems to describe our argument, right? Like they don't have collective bargaining rights and so they're kissing Trump's ring. Why do you think it says that when they have collective bargaining rights, they won't?
I strongly disagree with that read of the Kagan evidence. It's
So it's
saying
two-sided.
that, yeah, but it's not, there's no part of this that says that the lack of bargaining rights is the reason they're kissing the ring. It's literally like unions aren't even, it literally says unions were silent and didn't even speak out about their bargaining rights being stripped.
Well, I
Because
would disagree with
they
that, given
support Trump.
what the 1AC is for.
Okay.
The solvency stuff, you said people have already left. 1AC Schumacher says that BLS statistics are overinflated. What evidence do you think you have that counters this? What statistics have you drawn that you think
So-
account for this?
One, I think BLS primarily focuses on the private sector, but
Yeah, like your argument is that the private sector
but
is
two,
bought out a
like,
bunch of us.
we're
Or a bunch
reading a
of
bunch
us.
of cards about things like lack of research funding, the top experts who have the most institutional knowledge, leading, et cetera. We have cards that speak to this. Okay, you good?
Yes, it's out.
Alright.
Where is the executive counterclaim lobby?
The chambers was the kind of
I
taco.
don't know if there's. Okay, is everyone good? Cool.
Kick the exact counterclaim and 18 counterclaims of reason
particular argument, not the team, but they're good. One, they're key to text, then they informative from multiple different angles, and second, incentivize real substantive debate on the USMG or Congress keyboard, and check their offense. Login. The two ACs run the impact of without answering the scenario or having an external impact. Key frame, our scenarios on that regulation top all animation or something. So this means that our impact has to be about the pace of innovation. Anything else is an example both in the US and globally, and now is better than later. That's what I see Ashton. This means that even if they would regulate, then hypothetically be better AI. It's only a question of speed. Winning the AI race is essential deterrence. Whoever believes that the AI will win wars in the future, at least as assassin as the US in the Gulf War, which the Ashton and drop. Not always a time for Ashton. Reform we are the most aggressive situation decades when the Middle East had one AGI is never more shakily. Then tremendous simply the not to be will have never goes away. This then you're the person making power innovation time. World War, 21 is safety. Whoops, this card is a terminal without an impact. 2T did not really terminal for why AGI is safety is key, no you where impacts. This block is regulated often. Also, the only word is search about safety with no impact of it. But regulations works for safety. This is offense 1. With respect to regulation based paths, fantasy, elementary 1. The first word that's legislation will obviously detect the risk of the number one of the matter of this makes me a situation you know where we've made it. Determine the issues in your hard analysis working. Essential information must be avoided today. The AI can be written into one law. 2 offshoring is work for school. And Kelly, what do they do? More severe in China. Who safety culture the drive to go where versus sensitive American women. Longest requirements nature and disaster amnesia is China harbor the action because we love the DRC trouble extension of the voice of the AI on board. Interest from within the DRC are reviewed. 3. This will solve safety concerns about regulation shop. 5. XAI was having capital safety. Security from the European Union goodness. The chapters of cities and security targeting providers to us. That they would sign these mobile Microsoft. As the company would assign it. 2C2 is multi-planar backlash. This is the worst impact card I've ever seen. It has 15 words and you have no clue what quote backlash means or its impact. But regulations, worst uncertainty, it's not even fun. Every day, not production, but you lost your business. I have $200 for the regulation. We will be put regulation is 100% AI, to make recruiting innovation and healthy. Uncertain reduce limits, regulation, about the expense of innovation, and all other posterity said above. Next argument is rights and natural, no cipher. So the litigants will try and court on that it will succeed. Also, copyright, privacy, antitrust, etc. Not actual AI development, which is our journal link. No comprehensive AI relation now. We'll stop see Trump. We'll do light touch from the we expect to like no trouble with AI, trouble putting in the stocks of AI, there's our stocks from the motivation, approach to any of the regulation while on it, rebuild by Biden's XO, the sites of hormones, 2% of the innovation tools mentioned, omnibus and federal AI legislation will be acting in the nurture, comprehensive regulation on about the year, we're back to moving to related AI and academic, all the efforts sort of talk about the clear regulatory efforts to revise the comments of federal laws, highly unlikely, but there's some interests are, the next argument is innovation, right, like regulations are definitely to AI, it goes, this is experimentation is the host and evidence, Holmstrom is not competitive, it's the regulations can stimulate innovation, but it isn't compared which is critical, the speeds, body conceits perception of production innovation, and then environmental regulations, right? You help them to have extra and perceiving regulations and various innovation from regulations, certainty is answered above, and first movers are key. To incentivize innovation because they just said that it is one off step, but not that it is key. Several awards for why increased innovation, one preemptive legislation shuts out experimentation to consider physics. Impulse legislation, misguided history, technology, that's nearly averted, but preemptive legislation ecosystem, the must have happening for 25 security cars, resolve the tweets by well-known facts or well-suited to actually make facts on inventing new rules by relying existing ones that relegation or perspective. Limited is good, also the idea including the all-told and how much like actually the genius of the general law and laws that experiment substance into the future. That's actually true regulatory obfuscation makes regulations useless and counterproductive because then there's even there lots of analysis as a result of trying to make the technical obfuscation procedural social rigidity like our internal processes from so like with procedures and some better financial like these education of rotating routine rules are financial side resources lower restriction the rules are procedurally impeccable as well as allow loss of anticipation for fashion limitation in AI is catastrophic AI regulation may be counterproductive by the time it takes in fact protocols innovation board they can be board themselves as a revision misaligned and capable of regulating the president anticipating the future. 3 inherently premature regulation scares off investment partner and take premature regulation like the luxurious innovation respective reason forecast fund critics are hardly better than a point for political race regulatory restraint premature action signals investors and money to be put elsewhere Next is this info. This is literally so misguided. It does not say that unregulated AI causes this info or cognitive warfare. Just that other actors and adversaries are conducting AI-enabled this info attacks. No war, how to solve also determinable impact. Never said this info is existential. Whatever arguments with blockers to work off of the 2C concessions. AI counter this info. It's about AI can find opportunities for counter this info. AI can detect false info or detect these by bots. AI can cost value use AI. And then to automate bots running around the AI. False risk and everything include applications that files that like false content knowledge. It also solve downside to other emerging technology. Negative 20. We control many parameters in the future, Russians avoiding risk biotech and non-medical, control of the dangerous, biotech data have to create a global pandemic, AI solves the financial crisis and no internal link, counter investor panic, sales is the 14th distribution of natural correlations, showing up factors of minutes and control, integrated and then robot functions and capable to decode the market rate, emerging supply statistics as well as near rational price, and I like to be controlled this. When these are policies and crashes, the blueprint for market stability, we have to alternative financial regulations. Flash crashes do not have an impact on the government, but before so we get new answers when they have one, and this info is down because of Russia. And things we get set are not AI. Sorry? Yeah, next is the Poslowski. Next is the Poslowski card. Zero does not mean the regulations are good. Just that some states are pushing for them, but they've conceded that they are not coming now because as long as the cards are above, EU regs are relevant. Question right is what U.S. deterrence. No insert of you highlighting debates computer activity, and it causes slippery slope to inserting cards in entire text, and it's a terrible model for debate. The Cato thing is wrong. Get out of here. You need to answer specific index and warrants. Cato also has peer-reviewed authors, and they concede the models of which matter. And this study was not published in Cato, which means that even if they're a fellow, it's not mattering.
Go to advantage one.
Go to advantage one.
No more.
Economic decline does not cause war wolves. Now 20, not the thing that even showed me economic conditions back then war prices were the cause, and there will be a lot more than some 40 recessions on 20. Most of them are related to the economy recessions over the end of the last 5 years. So war with a quick and cheap victory motivation is steered down economic gain, even in the large cost of effects, like media effect, that will work. And and actually, Brenner is wrong. The focus will be undersupplied accusation for legal research and other for official value. The workers' mitigation has actually Brenner does not address the constitutional obstacles, bias, and social licenses, which also have the allocated resources. Wait, are you sure you want that correct? This isn't our national.
Well, no, this is about his group document, not his AI arguments. It's fine.
Okay. to 3:45.
6:15.
Yeah.
So everyone's computer fully charged.
Yeah.
Which one of these those?
Okay, the wire was sent.
Connolly, would another hour would help get us there?
I think we're fine. Yeah, thank you.
Only 9 can take time.
Okay.
Okay. Order. Solvency. Advantage 1. Advantage 2. Advantage counterclaim. Shutdown decide. AI decide. Okay. Panel good. Georgetown.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's not. Okay, okay.
Okay.
We're straight turning the AI regs aside. Cross-sex was explicit. They've continued the full weight of the claim that the plan resulted in lobbies for AI regulations, which overcomes the rest of their solvency deficits. The block did not contextualize any claim to the AI descent. Strike new arguments. Our strategy has been extremely clear. Ever since we read 12 cards of straight to the GBC, so give them no mercy. First was people already left. We conceded their link, which proves that the people left are still enough to cause regulations, regardless of the statistics on people who left. And private sector buyouts are overinflated. We do solve regs. Conceding the full weight of the lobbying link has to outweigh funding cuts, especially when their evidence about groundwork disease regs and getting better than 1.001% risk of solvency is enough. Unions will not be pro-Trump even in general. They're still lobbying against him in this instance. Courts won't kill the ass. The warrant is low for other doctrines, but the link proves that at least AI regs will hold steady. Advantage 1, concede impact defense to everything. The straight turn is obviously external. The advantage 2, same thing, concede all impact defense. Action trigger defense is not applied. Currently says about the growth impact. Not the AI leaks off, so they don't have any defense. Admin flex is wrong. There's no impact of frivolous disputes. Not if done by the last 6 years of bargaining. Then a weak way says that unions channel unproductive disputes, regardless of only on the straight turn. This is civil service impact, which we conceded does not matter because it's not implicate AI regs at all. Because they did not say that it does. Advantage counterline. It's irrelevant. We straight turn the net benefit. The counterline is no way of lobbying Congress to regulate AI, so they have no inroads. Employment law does not solve better. Galvin is highlighted to say nothing. The plan encompasses the counterline's protections, makes them more trustworthy and more conceding that they do not lobby. Perm do both. It solves anymore. For solves better. The shutdown decide no veto turn 1. Their card never says congressional backlash, and he has the majority in his pocket. 2. Trump lost in 2020 and a midterm in 2018, so it's empirically disproven. 3. Venezuela and Soleimani prove no escalation. 4. Lashing is logical. Pack 25 from rolling downturn. Trump and mighty war. No driving presently shortages, especially with China. No manufacturing power is essential to supply chains. 4. No Iran extinction. Corroded. 25. Iran does not want a war. Iran's network has been decimated. Its stockpiles have been depleted. What do they mean? Iran could turn to desperate measures, but knows these could lead to result of the Trump regime. It's just Washington does not make sense. Trump is unwilling to see a self-dead or interventions fear that Iran will enter war on ethical. Its scientists have been eliminated. There is no capability the U.S. can attack again. Post-COVID is a different K-22. A decade of conflicts in the U.S. was able to resolve seats over uniting, looking for offense to regional wars. They had yes, with the issue around the pandemic, econ wars are unsustainable because states normalizing relations. Many trends demonstrate the more fluid environment. Durable, good faith, durable fiat sells a veto whole of government compliance. Means Trump cannot strike it down. Anything else kills off ground and concede fairness outweighs from condo. Now the AI decide. Yeah. The straight turn is massive. The 1 in every 6 minutes of grasping at straws. We have the same impact as the U.S. having good AI to beat China, and failure to regulate causes fast failures which shatter AI leadership systems are destined for misalignment, and vulnerabilities will be uncorked in the coming years. Now, regs are good. 1. Safe takeoffs, kill switches deep, disclosing downsides and public reassurance, ensures alignment. 2. Self-correcting. Initial regs create a virtuous cycle that incentivizes maximal safety, which is judged framing through uniqueness. Corporate arms racing ensures misalignment. So try for regs. China's ahead now. Class in 127 on the deployment of trust. China years ahead. Its capacity built in decades of experience as they found the rest of the world only 4%. In the U.S., integrated AI MT found 99% of AI in the U.S. China no impact on profit China. And 135 manufactured work with 13 in the U.S. One AI will car just 72% in China. Just AI 32 in the U.S. Amplified circles and productivity to catch up to trust. This is the overwhelming consensus. Cypher 25 existing models actively encourage innovation from internet classes for me now the best companies acknowledge that need as do experts. Regulatory standards are value sensitive and solve towards 25 combined minimal threshold configurability, guarantee functionality through shared protocols, guide development towards configurability, and then by considerations or respect for HR conservation, the rule of law, and guided by a high order if there is no requirement, enhance on properties by nudging of practice design, monitoring, the control, and sustainability, and giving info about applicable regulations and values. New regulations will be forward-looking and preemptive, which solves path dependence query 25 of the pacing problem, underscores the need for regulatory feedback to assist, interpret, and respond to reduce gaps, policy based must adopt more tools, sandboxes, adulted, object transfer to manage and compliance with horizon getting identifiers with their visualize, signals, use anticipatory governance, preemptively draft guidelines for model with the US with innovation, outpace safeguards. Now, the Drexel and Kelly evidence says China's worse because of their loose safety culture, which obviously means flawed regulation. Offshoring to China is impossible. About 25, the US added Chinese companies to its blacklist for active contract US security to restrict Asian access to big tech. Those are targeted regulations are exported abroad and onshore development. NABL 25, the US framework should address inconsistencies in a decentralized approach. Innovation helps companies also become aware of investment opportunities and asset back to the law. Thus, products of regulatory supervision while benefiting from guidance to the sandbox. Already on these companies to other track foreign startups should be in the US position to reciprocal sandbox help US comply with for networks. The Shaw evidence is one statement from Google CEO. It's obviously biased now. AI controls are inevitable. Momentum is surging across tort law and controls and intellectual property. It should be grossly misapplied but still chokes off upsides. Through frivolous application, regs fill in and solve that cipher. Restrictive governance is inevitable. But federal regs are key. Widen 20 feet, decentralized approach, inconsistent international companies advance their own federal spending expense, market sharing rules, standards, and affordable globally states and targeted, and trade government for fragmented environment, leading companies face regimes, custom scale, using ICF to control exports, or to expand. Trump light touch now does not matter, even if there's no regulations. He's doing antitrust and torts, etc. Now regs increase innovation. First mover incentives, anti-monopolism, market dynamics, and legal uncertainty. All disprove corporate free marketing, which is Holstrom. There is an impact of certainty, and regulations are more certain. All their assertions are uncarded. It unlocks new cases for positive development. Coding 25. Participants developing innovation led from regulatory answers. Only emphasis novel solution of all regs. EU sandbox, also flexibility, emphasis, and talent emphasis on reporting results, integrates engagement with regulators, and certainty, ensuring not-just engagement as a client's obligation as an opportunity for learning game theory. Ability to Kleinberg 25. Even though record change space of novelists, each player with our utility on their relation mutually serve the interest of safety, commitment, lends the agreements that prior to investments. The Dickinson evidence is about lawyering and environmental assessments, not government regulations. Insert 3 highlighting the Reinhardt evidence as regulation is quote ingenious and necessary. Insert 3 highlighting regulations win the AI race. Unchecked corporatism ensures catastrophic security failure, aspiring into military and economic collapse. That's Hegel. AI safety key to leadership. Alexander 25 safety speeds us up. Reg keep data centers here. Prevent Chinese spies. China no debate over safety. If Americans take safety seriously, Chinese fashion deal will remove from small regs here. Prevent bigger regs later. Overreact even very small regs do solve even if they increase safety. Our evidence says it. And even if AI solves disinfo or flash crashes, those kill it first. And it's not just disinformation, but safety vulnerabilities. The misinfo is inevitable because of Russia. Because of Russia is our point. Regulatory absence means Russia and China can collaborate to shut off American leadership. Lastly, yes, inserting re-highlightings. The key to check bad research debate is not really communicative. Otherwise, we wouldn't spread and calmly we answer every question in cross-sex. It's least arbitrary, which means it's out to link assumes Trump wouldn't veto because it requires one whole mindset shift instead of the PS100s, and he's less prone to flip-flops already, which avoids convoluted decides, which was on veto.
It's 5-3. Accept that. Okay. there are two more doors. I'm sorry. Okay, it's on. It's just the day.
Slow. You said just the AI?
Yep.
What? Yeah, I'm good.
Actually, AI then shut down.
Yeah, then what?
Shut down.
Okay. Stationary.
Okay. Can. Good. Okay, awesome. This debate is a question of passing out innovations necessary to beat China, otherwise it turns not to us. This existential nuclear war, which is an impact you can be certain of, the only relevant question is which team gets there fastest. The central issue is that most of the 1AR is wholly irrelevant because no one has read a terminal impact to safety. Michigan has asserted that it solves alignment, but the 1AT impact R does not have a terminal about that. Neither do they. I'm also pretty sure the 1AR did not read a terminal impact to alignment either. If it did, then strike it because it was not in the 2AC. The 1AR explicitly flagged did not have a terminal impact, said no new 1AR impacts and 1AR does not justify it. That means we are light years ahead on the question of development to beat China. This is a beat China debate, not an alignment AI to make it safe debate. Also independently, and this is crucial, they have dropped that private sector solves alignments. The 1AR read a card that companies are adopting things like safety regulations internally through ethics boards and standard reviews to align AI on their own. Zero 1AR words about it means you should feel wholly confident that regulations are irrelevant to the question of safety because corporations will solve them, which means there's only possibly a risk that regulations slow down development and cause us to fall behind China. Now, China, not ahead now, was new in the 1AR. The 2AC did not say it. You should strike it. It determines block strategy and allows infinite 1AR sandbag, which makes it negative impossible. But the US is ahead now. Their snapshots with the full picture held in 25 minutes of the full picture. The US and it's with the over performance chips to the exploitation world leadership and AI, but that lead is resilient until we overregulate technical activity. Because they have lots of fascination, production, so you go through planning. Talent needed author defense control centers to keep students to be classified by various things that are and also as against dark key Americans also student and cyberture. Essential for AI models in the US is maybe a competitive advantage when considering so rapidly to not spending. Sure also with the Americans level that everyone which second hand information bureaucracy not to create the organic system that Silicon Valley and the envy. Now regulations are bad. A few warns. One is they are geo-perspective. They cannot align with technology because we don't know what kinds of regulations we need. Since the technology is inevitably adaptive in the future, it shows off innovation. The 1AR card that is tagged to say future regulations will be adaptive does not say that. It is an advocate. It is someone saying that future regulations ought to be adaptive, which is what the shrunken text says. You should refer actual predictive evidence that speaks to the way the government has empirically done regulations and to the fact that the regulators simply cannot know what tech in the future will look like, especially given the pace of AI innovation, which is proved by things like ChatGPT coming online, and now there being tons of AI models. That demonstrates that prospective regulation only has the risk of choking off innovation and crushing it preemptively. Two, they have dropped that the prospective regulation causes investors to pull out their funding because they are afraid that all of their investments, in particular AI companies, will become useless because Congress will wake up tomorrow and sign a new regulation that renders that company irrelevant or that significantly hamstrings its profitability and shuts down development. That was dropped by the 1AR. It's the Reinhardt evidence. It outweighs everything because even if they're correct that regulated AI is more aligned, if no one is putting their funding there in the first place or investing in it, then that development does not occur. Three, regulations absolutely turn safety. Prospective regulation is worse for it because they do not adapt over time. Even tiny miscalculations have ripple effects later and make us path to the Chelsea and 18 given our medical systems launch down against regulation down the road, robotics, investigation rate, regular decision application, very question to what pressure missing aspects of interesting, and if any fall leads, anything fall lead, will cover anything just statute by statute. The fourth thing is certainty. They absolutely deck it. None of their evidence speaks to the incentive structure of firms. Regulations are worse for uncertainty, and this is just about perception and separate from the actual effective systems. They think regulators don't know what they're doing, and methods to recruit. That's the Sitanti evidence, which is an independent link. The next argument was that regs get exported. This only matters if there is a terminal impact to safety, which they have not read. But even if there were some kind of terminal impact, the fact of the overregulation turns this because if the U.S. overregulates its AI and does not produce it fast or innovate it, then regulations don't get exported because no countries are buying our AI or looking to the U.S. as a model. This is proven by the fact that we don't model many of Europe's laws because they've choked off their industry, and the U.S. rather have have a stronger industry. The stock market is fantastic. The CEO of Google is obviously super qualified to speak to questions of AI because they would have to have tons of qualifications in the data field in order to become CEO in the first place. Regulations inevitable. It's wrong. Their evidence is terrible. The Wyman evidence is not Trump 2.0. It concedes a broad-based national AI model of the UAU Act is unlikely over the next few years as a direct quote. It's also not in the scope of the plan. The cyber evidence is litigants will try in court now. Not that it will succeed, and it's about copyright, which is an impact dropped by the 1AR, privacy, antitrust, etc. are not key to or not about AI development. Now, unlocks innovation is wrong. The Koenig and Killenberger cards are seriously laughable, and some of the works I've seen all year. They are highlighted into nothing, and you should put their document visibility mode before you allow them any warrants they do not explicitly read. They're also about other countries and say that in places in Latin America, the regulations promoted development. That's not true of the United States, and we are outparting them like 10 to 1 on the question of U.S. development here. All that was above, plus they dropped investment, which again is a prior question to innovation, because even if regulated AI would be more innovative, the fact that no one is funding it outweighs. The next argument was that regulation speed of development. This Alexander card is literally terrible. It says, first, it is too early even to know what the science of AI regulations is, whether they might actually speed us up relative to China. That is a direct quote. Second is all the other words they highlighted are super silly and highlighted into nothing. The first one is that China is debating safety, and so if for some reason America takes safety seriously, Chinese factions have more room. I don't know what that means, and again, please put this in visibility mode. The second thing this card says is that small regulations might be beneficial because they prevent overreactions later. That is not the plan. They've conceded that the plan results in massive AI regulations because they've given us a full scope of our link into the internal link as of the one in C. Regulations will slow it down. More cards.
Wait, didn't you say safety, not key leadership?
Just like say it.
Or like they run the card as safety is key leadership.
Oh, safety is not key to leadership. This card, their card does not see that. It simply says that if the leading country has safe AI, other countries will model it. Not that safety itself propels leadership. This is backwards because if the U.S. falls behind in AI and China has a lead, other countries will want the more innovative tech and therefore will follow China anyways. I'm pretty sure I have a card about this, which I will read now. If I can.
There's also around safety.
Oh, this is also new, so they don't get this in. The 1AR about leadership is key to safety. Pavel and Antoninus can establish a little leader in AI, the person for advantages, the leader in economic military object, rivals, rivals, the government, uses Edison's light bulb, the US is in the world's innovation leader, but China and Russia are making investments. Proves that the US having more innovative AI is a prerequisite to safety. Their cards don't say that China is uniquely better, and also, again, the only terminal impact is existential war, which only we have an internal link to.
Okay, we'll start with once you get that card.
Okay.
That's a good question. I think this is, oh, 615.
Oh, I wrote it down, yeah, 614 left.
Okay, that card's set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just got it. 6, 15. Briefly, did you read both of the notice cards like Hi and the previous?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's just these. Just right outside.
Oh, okay, then I'll just get some water. No, you're fine though. I mean, shedding may be bad at you, but.
Okay, it's the area. Is anybody not good? Okay.
Regulations are good. Framing issue before you parse through the gigantic cardboard. One, consensus. It's undeniably on our side, where judgment says leading AI experts are sounding alarm bells. The current market dynamic of winner takes all guarantees catastrophic failure and unpredictable development because there's literally no accountability for developing a rogue system. Remember, the argument for the link to be...
Okay, I didn't start the timer. That's I'm just gonna go. Okay.
Regulations are good. Framing issue before you parse through the gigantic cardboard. One, consensus. It's undeniably on our side, where judgment says leading AI experts are sounding alarm bells. The current market dynamic of winner takes all guarantees catastrophic failure and unpredictable development because there's literally no accountability for developing a rogue system. Remember, from the 1NC, their argument has been that a world without the app is no AI regulation at all, so some has to be better than none. Cypress says that this is a factual reality even among corporate leaders. OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic CEOs have all, quote, noted the importance of regulations but are requiring safety measures now, which means even if they win, that the Google CEO has better qualifications, it only goes our way. Default to author quals. Georgetown's evidence is all pro-business hacks swiping on Cato, while ours cites scientific and expert consensus about prioritizing national security, and says that regulation is still in our collective lifeline in the race. Two, uniqueness. Georgetown does not have very good cards to say we will win the race now. Our class of evidence alone wins us the debate. It says that China is resoundingly ahead, and as from last week, only 40% of the U.S. firms integrated AI compared with the vast majority of China's, and they're beating us in manufacturing, quotes 100 to 13, and 95% of US AI developments have stagnated and have been totally unprofitable with no commercial applicability. Finally, and most importantly, China is ahead because of a lack of public trust. It's a prerequisite to win the race because American companies cannot attract capital without it. This argument is not new. The one in C never had a card that said the US wins, and the one in our blew up this page. The 2C also said AI fails now, and the block read new cards to answer it, so it's certainly justified. And they said their scenario is only about China lead, and they read a new impact to China AI lead, so we certainly get no answers. Now, their evidence is terrible on this question. First is the Heim evidence. This card has no quals. We only know that they are a fellow for AI governance, which cannot compare to our several PhDs and field expert consensus surveys. The warrant is total computation capacity and owning more advanced chips. It's status quo descriptive, but only the warrants I explained above about manufacturing lead are predictive of China's impending gains, which will surely outpace the US. Next is lead resilient. Penthekukis is a known hack for conservatives. Strike it because there's obviously an incentive for him to lie because he gets finance for that. The first warrant is state planning, disproven by them being the second largest economy in the world. Second is manufacturing. Answer above. Investment gap is not stark. It does not assume our internal link turn to investment since public backlash just totally slaughters it. Next was that the next warrant in that card is that China relies on the US. They're already going to go for benefit. They already got the benefits from the US AI data that already exists, and it proves that American safety slows down China as well. Now, I'll extend AI safety key to leadership here. Rex, our key to American lead. One, security. Safety species of, quote, relative to China and incorporating of the cybersecurity regulation for data centers prevents Chinese spies from hacking their way into our data, slowing Chinese pace and answering the Penthekukis warrant. Second, modeling. China's having their own safety debate, but conceded that if America takes safety more seriously ourselves, it is more likely that Chinese faction will also take it into account. And so if they're correct that safety slows us down, it slows them down more. Three, overreaction. Smaller regulations lead to larger ones, snowballing into a more robust regime. Even if the app causes bigger ones, if we win that they're happening to some extent in the status quo, it's more likely that fragmented regulatory regimes will snowball to a massive one absent a plan. Now, group innovation warrants. One, self-correcting. Dropped initial regulatory successes are modeled with regulatory sandboxes in the future. Corporations will have massive input into how regulations are done, barring they comply with basic measures. That's code 8. Two, externally dropped every word for why absent regulation innovation will collapse in the short term. Monopolies will create an impossible business environment. Holstrom also says there's a first mover incentive to be the first company to comply with regulations which proves that impact flips our way. Yes, predictive evidence. Our evidence is making predictions about the future of regulation, and says failure to regulate guarantees we lose the race. They also cannot say this argument because they conceded the plan results in a tidal wave of regulation, which means the only thing that matters is the internal link turn. Now, they say investors pull out. One, it's the status quo and totally disproven by AI companies, literally asking for regulatory guidance in the status quo. That's examples I gave in qualifications in the overview. Second, Game theory, drop incarnate straighter into this argument. Our primary evidence is that regulations as a commitment device where investors know what they're investing in the first place. They'll only back AI. Do you think U.S. companies are going to use effective safety measures? Or also offshore investment to China, regulations being self-correcting, takes out the blustering about Congress waking up and writing a regulation tomorrow. Now, we're not going for regulations exported, but they certainly don't have a card that says private companies will effectively beat China now. All our evidence says that the status quo model is the worst of every world. Companies are developing unsafe AI, which can be easily cyber-attacked, and introduces massive national security vulnerabilities, and that a free market landscape causes, quote, catastrophic failures. That's all the Hegel and Alexander evidence, as well as our much better card that says the U.S. is losing. Their only card from the literal CEO of Google, even if he has better qualifications. He's obviously lying out of his ass to try and make a profit, while not recognizing the catastrophic risks of a light-touch regulatory strategy. Finally, extend controls are inevitable. Multiple warrants they have no game on. Their index to our card saying that a national system does not exist now is our point. Restrictions are inevitable on AI and the status quo, but they will be ineffective, which sums every word. Drop massive lawsuits for copyright and anti-AI systems will introduce massive business uncertainty, but cannot solve because lawsuits will be dragged out, not independently linked to their entire push about speed. The card being about copyright is our point. Tort suits, antitrust enforcement, random ad hoc state and localized regulations are each inevitable at every level of governance, which is Seibert and Wyman. Our evidence is crystal clear that says that there's a structural issue with each of these. They'll be fragmented, ineffective, too late, etc. But they'll still make developing good AI really hard and introduce a bunch of red tape. Their whole spin about no impact to safety is unwinnable. Hegel and Alexander are required reading. They say that unregulated AI guarantees crises. Lastly, patent defendants is totally wrong. Drop the one card we read. The Curry evidence says new regulations will be forward-looking and preemptive to filter out the downsides and prevent choking off positive developments. It's from 3 PhD professors. And last year, the Wachowski evidence is not us in regulatory sandboxes, and it's from 2018. And Curry also says that regulators use horizontal scanning audits, which overcomes their warrants for rights inevitable, and transparency mandates, which ensures an effective model in the U.S. Their biggest thing that they can go for is uniqueness. China is not ahead now. They've conceded the Alexander evidence, which is that China models whatever the U.S. does within safety discussions because they're looking for it on their own. Yeah, good.
Okay. That doc was already signed.
Why is it not
No, when the tours started happening, they were like, place your order for food in 5 minutes, and I was like,
I'll go outside so you can say. Yes, I can do it. Give me one.
I was not last time for the first time.
No, that was the last fight.
Actually, yeah, go for it.
Congratulations to both teams for an excellent octafinals debate in the Texas tournament. The decision is a 3-0 for the affirmative. start unless anyone else wants to.
If you don't want to, I will, but like, I usually have to be other people go first.
Okay, well, I'll start. So I voted F, and I think the big thing for me is that comparatively, I think the app has addressed many of the reasons AI regs are bad, some with like offensive reasons, and has external link terms that I think are not super grappled with by the Q&R. The first important issue that I think the app is ahead on is that first, haphazard regulations are inevitable in the status quo. There'll be patchwork and rely on a variety of different laws like copyright, state and local regulations, and I think the only negative evidence making arguments about why federal regulations are unlikely. I think the app has also posited an argument, as per their Alexander evidence, that regulations now prevent overly burdensome regulations in the future. And this sort of structuring uniqueness claim makes it difficult for me to conclude that regs are bad, because the alternative to union lobbied regulations is overly burdensome future regulation that nukes AI leadership. The second is that I think the app is doing a really good job articulating why regs are key to leadership and has a lot of external warrants that I don't think are necessarily grappled with in the Q&R. First, the China IP theft argument. Regulations keep data centers secure, which prevents Chinese IP theft. The second is public trust, and that this was one of the more important ones, that regulations are key to public trust and uptake in AI, and otherwise the US can never scale AI as effectively as China. They've also made a third argument that I thought was also relatively important, was that the US doing federal regulations inevitably makes it more likely that China uptakes their own AI safety regulations by like changing internal Chinese debates and empowering factions within China, and that undermines Chinese AI leadership more than it does in the US. So any negative effect of regulations would be more so true of China than the US. The best negative arguments, I thought, were one, that regulation stifles innovation by decreasing investment in AI. I think it's predominantly addressed by haphazard regulations being inevitable, China adopting regs hurting them more, and I think the app has a lot of defensive arguments towards the bottom of the Twitter about game theory, how it creates a race to safety without necessarily over-stifling AI applications, and that it breaks up monopolistic practices that are a barrier to innovation in the status quo. And I'm also somewhat persuaded by this app characterization that AI companies are calling for regs in the status quo as like some form of residual defense. That's why it wouldn't hurt investment, because they can like predict it at some point. Another neg arg that I sat with for a while is that safety is being adopted now. I wish the neg had like better evidence about private sector safety practices now. That the only part is about how Google and Microsoft are considering adopting EU safety practices. I wish it was making a more universalizable claim. The path dependency arguments, I think the app dev is solid on it, not amazing. I agree with the neg characterization that I think a lot of the app dev is a little bit more speculative about what the best types of regulations would be. But I do think the app has read solid evidence that initial regulations create policy feedback effects or future regulations being more tailored and appropriate, which I find some defense of the path dependency things. So the uniqueness debate was relatively important for me, and because I think it ties the public trust link turn all together. I think both sides would benefit from comparing the metrics that their evidence uses. A lot of the neg evidence makes arguments that the US has AI leadership because of sheer computing power, but I think the app evidence is more about how China is better integrated into society because there's like, I guess, comparatively more trust in the US. Based on the cards, it's not entirely clear to me which one is more important for leadership. I just think the Twitter is doing like somewhat convincing analysis that it's not just about computing power, but adoption throughout society that causes AI leadership, and adoption throughout companies, and arguments for why trust is a prerequisite to that, which I think only regulations can access. And the reason I don't necessarily think it matters who is ahead on the AI leadership debate is also because of this China emulation trend. The app has posited that China would be more disadvantaged by the US adopting regulations because of the argument that it like allows factions of China to mobilize support. So even if the US isn't ahead, or even if the US is ahead in the status quo, or not ahead in the status quo, it would comparatively like hurt China more to adopt safety regulations, which could potentially flip the direction of uniqueness. The last thing I thought about was this argument about leadership being a prerequisite to safety rules. I don't think it gets the neg a lot. It just says that like the AI leaders have global norms, but that begs the question of the rest of the like debate whether or not regs are net better or worse for US AI innovation and leadership. So that's just a kind of a stream of thoughts. Other people talk.
I'm another younger person. So, no, I vote out for Michigan. I do think that there's an impact to safety. I think it implicates your impact, and I think this modeling argument is important. The framing thing from the advice that I have really is in a really core heavy debate and one that is particularly late breaking. I think it is helpful to have framing that puts the different pieces of the debate in context to one another. So 1NR and 2NR are both like very in on the kind of time frame differential or like any risk. But one of the things I think the AF is doing a good job on is saying like even like doing the kind of like standard even if we lose this or even if they win X, here is how that situates within the rest of the debate, which makes it then like easier to understand how those pieces fit together for an AF ballot for me. So I start with the safety yes/no impact question. It kind of puzzles me because the impact is innovation and system success, which is just success of American AI leadership. So I think like the press and the 1NR and the 2NR about like there's no safety impact, I think is both incorrect, but also like there is an impact that is contextualized. In your evidence, like Ashenbrenner says, safety is important to check rogue systems. B, the AF contextualizes it to trust and certainty, meaning that there's more confident investment in innovation, which is Hegel. And I think the lack of safe development makes it harder to develop AI that succeeds in checking China, which is substantiated in both 2AC and 1AR cards, and the 2AR like flags and unpacks. I don't think it's hard then for me to envision running a ballot that's like, yes, any difference in speed matters if that speed develops worse AI or insecure models due to poor research or development. I don't think the status quo solves. Private sector might be signing on to safety codes, but missing an explanation about what those codes are, why they are sufficient, especially when the evidence is like comparing different companies that are signing on, and part of the argument is that large-scale deployment is difficult and worse but not standardized. I think it's part of the predictive and also part of the trust arguments from the affirmative. And I actually think that this ends up substantiating the AF's argument that patchwork regulations are inevitable, which Tony discussed already. The other benefit of government regulation, like US government regulation, I think they're winning, is that there's some risk that US regs force China to follow suit. I think they get the 1AR cards on this because the block introduces the speed argument, which this is a response to. Alexander might say that the effects are unsure, but it is predictive, and it says that there are more pro-safety factions in China that want to regulate, and it gives them our ability to do so, which also kind of speaks to the argument that Tony was talking about, that it was like negative consequences of regulation in China experiences also. I think kind of to emphasize the first thing that I said, there are a lot of moving parts to this debate, and what is unclear for me at the end of the 2NR is like, what parts you think matter most to create a negative ballot. It feels a little bit like a block more than like making decisions or choices and kind of doing the ballot framing or the ballot construction, which is where I think that like for me, in a super hard heavy debate that like I do not judge a whole lot of, like you have to tell me what is important, and I know that you think speed is important, but like I think they are ahead on both the speed question like ought to be sacrificed for the sake of like better AI regulations, and that the modeling thing is able to largely resolve that.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think the places I can be most additive, one is that I think I'm quite a bit maybe less hardcore than Tony on the question of like, does US safety make trying to go like so much slow? It's like, I don't know, it could slow them down a bit or whatever, but I do think that like, as both of them discussed, the like impact to if there is a safety event, whether that be a data breach or like some kind of harm done as a result of like tort law being too slow or something like that, the impact on investment and development speed in the US is catastrophic. And I think that the other place that hasn't been talked about as much is that I think I'm like a bit bigger on the link to the AF than has been discussed so far. Like I think your cards are pretty good in being like, the unions will push for bad regs. I don't think that they, obviously have much contestation of that, that I'll clarify, that is like contextual to the plan. Like all of the stories they're telling about sandboxes, etc., are like, by the way, excellent stories. I'm loving the extrapolation of warrants and all that. But I think you're right that all of that is like, this is the optimal vision for regulation. I don't think they access that optimal vision But I'm also not certain, based on both debating and the wording of the cards and the fact that there is a lot of debating about this question, that like the regs that Congress would pass under a Trump administration in response to union lobbying would themselves be like absolutely catastrophic. And I think part of the problem there is that like a lot is riding on just the like first one in C card, because the Holmstrom thing is just like not a very good card. Anyway, or sorry, that was their author. Your author was a different H guy, Huddleston. Anyway. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about is like the uniqueness question. So I spent a while at the beginning thinking about like, okay, is a snapshot uniqueness claim new? I ultimately, the short version of this is like, I ultimately decided I didn't need to care about snapshot uniqueness like literally at all. And at the very least, the terms that are being read in the 2AC are embedding uniqueness for like safety has a predictive effect. On like works regulation later, and that's the only uniqueness that ultimately like is relevant to me. So like I'm fine being like fine, we throw out the snapshot cards. It just had no effect on my decision. Other thing, like if you're curious about why I did not read and highlight only, I'm happy to explain. I also wanted to mention that I thought they were more right than you were about the discussion of the Alexander card, and I think all three of us agree that that card is doing a shit ton of work for them. Obviously, yes, it's raising the question, I think that is answering that question in the direction that the affirmative is characterizing it. And the other thing I wanted to say is like, despite, I think, the fact that we all decided the same way, this was not an easy debate for me to decide, and at no point during the debate did I know who was winning, and it was also very exciting to judge, and I very much enjoyed it. On the edge of the seat.
I have one question for you, You said a thing, but I didn't fully like hear it, so you said it. It's okay. Did you say that you did not put their stuff in like in this mode when you read highlighting?
No.
Okay,
Because,
so like you read
so if you actually, like
context of words?
it matters to me like what the context is, but I'm obviously not like
Okay,
letting unhighlighted things affect my opinion.
I'm just curious because it seems like all three decisions featured this Alexander card, which is like maybe 15 words total and like not.
They're really good words, and they're not being mischaracterized. I'm sympathetic to your complaint.
Keep
Like
data centers secure, prevent Chinese spies. Is not an argument for why that connects to like speed of innovation or what that has to do with any of the impacts.
It absolutely, because you're right that the question at the top is like, here's the frame. What we do affects how fast we are vis-a-vis China. And you're like, that's a question. I'm like, I totally agree. And then it's like, here's the answer to that question. Yes, their highlighting is minimal, but like, is it warrants for the claim? Absolutely. Does it make grammatical sense? Yeah, barely.
What part gets from China's spies on our data centers to that means they win the AI?
The data breach type stuff, which both implicates, I think, public trust and IP theft. I'm sympathetic to the notion that like a lot of the debating about this is like disproportionate to the amount of evidence that's addressing the question. I do think though, and one of the things that I had in the like the long versions of stuff that I felt was a bit redundant with what had already been said, is that like part of the stuff in your ev that I thought lined up really well is about like privacy laws, that it wasn't intuitive to me at first like whether that was super germane to like AI development questions, but like this is part of the glue and functions as an impact term to that bit of the link, and I did think that was part of the link that was pretty good, I guess, in terms of the EV, even though you weren't necessarily like, specifically focusing on mentioning privacy stuff. But it's kind of like it all lines up and makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for Tony as well. Yeah. So like a central part of your decision seems to be like if the US does regulations, then China will do regulations and that will harm the more. Is the card for that Alexander? Or is there another?
Yeah, it is Alexander. And to talk about the highlighting of it, like I agree, it's really.
Is this sufficient for you? Like China owned debate over
well,
safety.
the first line is safety. The first line is like safety speed us up, and then it goes through the different reasons why U.S. doing safety regulations would speed us up. And one of them is that it would keep data centers secure. One reason is that China would like have their own internal debate, and then they would like maybe do regulations.
Well, it doesn't even say that. It just says if America takes safety seriously, Chinese factions more. Like, is that sufficient for you to conclude that U.S. data regs mean China adopts their own data regs and that slows them down and harms them comparatively more than it harms the U.S.? Because I feel like that is a lot of work that's not happening in the Alexander card nor in speeches.
Well, it was definitely in speeches. I agree with you, it's not really in the card. Like, I definitely think, like, they could highlight more in this card, but I did find that we are on this, like, pretty persuasive.
Okay.
I do think this is part, maybe all, of the reason that I'm much lighter in my evaluation of that question than Tony ended up, but like, they're not misrepresenting the card,
No,
just as a factual matter.
That makes sense, yeah. I don't think I have other questions. I appreciate it. Great stuff. Good to share.
Good to be. I have a few things. One, thoughts on wanting our strategy, which fits in everything. Just air is good.
Maybe condo too.
Yeah, maybe condo as well. The other thing was,
I don't think you need to in this debate, and like, boy, do I love a nice commitment to a strategy, and like, yeah, sorry. Maybe more.
I still think you overcovered the veto DA, I think.
okay, that was another thing I wanted to ask. Elena, do you have similar thoughts, like one or?
It would have made our lives a lot easier if the 1AR tells us why the things didn't do.
Okay.
Like, the uniqueness to me, like, I spend, like 5 minutes at the beginning trying to figure out, like, do I think this is due? Do I think this is justified? Do I think this matters? Like, and I end up in the same position where I'm like, I don't think I have to resolve it. But one, more decision time, but two, like, that is helpful for you to win. It is also helpful for them to win, which means that, like, if you're going to read the cards in the 1AR, I would spend slightly more time being like, yep, this is, like, where it's coming from, knowing that the 2NR is going to say, like, this is new, we don't have to answer it, but I'll do it anyway.
FYI, I know that you said why, and I could not follow it. If that matters.
Why, like, we do get uniqueness stuff?
Yeah, like, what I literally flowed for that section is Art not new, 1 and C never said US wins. Obviously, there's a context about that, so, like, I understand what you're referencing. And then it's certainly justified. I absolutely do not know what came between that, which is not irrelevant. It's just like, I know that you literally did what Elena's saying, and I think what Elena's saying is you gotta do a little more for us to understand.
Yeah. And then the second thing is so Tony said spend less time on vetoes. Was there a place where like solvency could have been less redundant? Because like we were worried that like circumvention or like there's no more workers could take out the link, and so we just have nothing. Do you think that we're correct? It's
So like, I spent my whole decision time just looking at this book, so I gotta look at something.
If you're conceding like the link premise, like they are forwarding the premise that you, and I don't think they can make arguments why you cannot do that. I think you can make an argument like that, where like your impact's running a DA, they can't apply their solvency arguments to take out the link the DA is presented. I think I would find that persuasive maybe.
okay.
They also dropped an intrinsicness argument that I thought you maybe could have applied to it, or it's like,
Yeah, I missed that, sorry.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I have a question.
Do you think solvency could have been made less redundant in the 1AR? So like, do you think we can see like they concede the link, or process is clear, they think we lobby, that's all that matters.